Hello friends, in this video I want to show you how you wrap hemp on threaded fittings, not the correct way but instead the best way. In many videos in YouTube you see different ways people offer options there, but really those aren't the correct ways. To wrap hemp on threaded fittings we have to work on the hemp, make a thread, string with it, and here I'll show you how. Hemp is used mainly in metal piping, on fittings made of bronze, copper or steel. We don't use hemp on PVC piping, at least on the small sizes, because it is too dense. It doesn't give under compression and can crack the PVC. With PVC fittings, we must use PTFE tape, as I mentioned in another video. Depending on the building rules in your country, you may be able to use hemp on PVC fittings for 25 mil piping or larger. If we install hemp correctly, we can have a seal that might last even more than PTFE when sealing water pipes. In the packing or stuffing box of valves and taps, where the packing must stop water from climbing up a shaft, which must be able to turn, like the stem of a tap, we can't use PTFE tape. It won't work. We can only use hemp or O-rings. O-rings for stuffing boxes must be of a precise size, or they won't work. But hemp instead adapts to any size. As you see, mastering the use of hemp for sealing pipes can be very important in plumbing work. Now, let's see which is the proper way of wrapping hemp on a bronze male adapter, that is, a fitting with thread on its outer surface, and then screw it into a female adapter like this one, with its thread on the inside. Well, let's better get into business. Here we can see the different parts of the thread of a fitting. The crest is the widest part of a male fitting, and it's the narrowest diameter of a female fitting. Obviously, the crest of a male fitting enters the root of a female fitting. A root is the opposing diameter of a crest. The flanks are those surfaces that allow the fittings to screw into each other, and it is where there is friction. In this image, I show you the paths taken by water to leak out through a fitting, through the crests in red and through the flanks and grooves in blue. As the threads of the male fitting are slightly smaller than the threads of the female fitting, usually they can screw on very easily with your hands if they are new, and they remain with a bit of play. This shows that although we might have the fitting completely screwed in, there still is space between the threads where water can get through and leak. These spaces are the ones we have to fill in with hemp or any other packing. If the male thread and the female thread matched perfectly, it would be impossible to turn the threads and tighten the fitting. In this image, I show you how the hemp is squashed between the flanks of the thread, and as its compressibility has a limit, it tends to be pushed away, falling over the rest of the surface of the threads, occupying all the available space. Any excess should be pushed out at the end of the male thread. Many plumbers in the US, Europe and other places will scrape the male fittings thread with a hacksaw blade or a file, believing that that will produce notches that will help to anchor the hemp and stop it from moving around when they're putting on the female fitting. So they scrape the thread with a hacksaw, and there we go. If you scrape the thread softly, it won't cause it much damage. So if you do or you don't, really it doesn't matter much. But I'm not really convinced that this really is of any use to stop the hemp from moving about, because the notches are created only on the crests of the thread and not in the roots. So when you turn the thread, it still will move the hemp about in the roots. If the notches created are large, and especially once the compression increases, the hemp will simply break in those parts where they catch into the notches. And the important thing is having continuity in this string of hemp all throughout the threads. For example, here I've got a bit of hemp that looks like a string. The important thing is that it starts here and ends over here, all around the thread, and it doesn't cut. If we give it a pull and it cuts there, that's a place where water will leak. Now, many of these videos we see in YouTube show plumbers putting on the hemp. I'll take off a bit here. Not making a string of hemp, but instead they put it on very loose like this. And the truth is, when you put it on loose, it can cut very easily when you give it a pull. I put it on here nice and tight. I give it a pull and pop, it cuts. Why is this? Well, as the poet says, one string on its own is of no use. We put many strings together and we can pull a ship. Then this system used by many plumbers in Spain, UK, US and other places in their videos, putting the hemp very nice and loose there, it's not the best way, because one really has to use some strength there to push it in and stretch it out. The possibility of it cutting is quite high, higher than if we turn the fibers making a string. If we get hold of this hemp and we turn it like this, we will get something much stronger, much more solid. And however much we pull it, look, I even got it out of its place. As I said, however much we pull it, it won't break, it won't cut. With this, we avoid the female thread from catching on a bit of hemp, pulling it, cutting it, and leaving parts of the thread without hemp inside the roots. To avoid the hemp from moving out of place, what we have to do is make sure it's well anchored when we start wrapping up the threads. So the most important is to make sure it has integrity. If one puts the hemp on loose like this, as I already showed, it has no integrity. One pulls it a little bit and it cuts. So when we make a string with hemp, turning it, this gives integrity to the string. And we can make it very strong, and then we anchor it at the beginning, and the rest of the string will stay put in its place no matter how much one pulls, and the hemp will turn very little, or it will not turn while we put on the female fitting. Well, now I'll show you how to prepare the hemp so it is strong and it has integrity. Then we choose a certain amount of hemp, about maybe this quantity, not much more than this, and we prepare a string of hemp. A string of hemp that is strong and capable of keeping its integrity despite the forces we might pull into it. We take the amount we need. We don't need more than this for half an inch fitting, but if we need a bit more, we can add a bit more. Then the first thing we do is put some grease on the hemp, grease, special grease for plumbing, and we start rolling the hemp with the grease. With our fingers we roll it and pushing the grease among the fibers and covering all the hemp with grease inside and out while we form this string of hemp. We put small amounts of grease first, because if we put too much grease, we won't be able to turn the fibers and create a string with it. Our fingers will just turn in the air thanks to the grease. There we have a bit advanced now. We'll turn it around so we can start putting grease on the rest of the fibers. We have to turn the fibers so they weave together and eventually they integrate fibers with other fibers, and that is where we create the strength of the string. Now and then we find bits of bark among the fibers, and it's better to get these out and throw it away because they're too big and they can create problems among the threads of our fittings and avoid a good seal. And more grease. Okay, that's it. Okay, here we have a string of hemp, nicely greased, ready to be used. Strong enough to pull it firmly and it won't cut. Obviously, we shouldn't use it for a tug of war because it'll break anyway. In some videos, as I showed you before, people put the hemp on dry without a lubricant like grease, as I use here. And as you should know, grease, its function is to protect the hemp from humidity, because hemp is an organic material, it's a plant. So in presence of humidity and water, it'll rot, and then it'll lose all its function. It spoils and breaks up into little pieces, and that is when we start having water leaks in our fittings. So don't use water to hold the fibers together as some people show in their videos. So it is critical that hemp is wrapped on with a lubricant like grease or some other appropriate sealant. Okay, now that we have a good string of hemp, let's see how we put it on the threads for it to work properly. First of all, we put one end of our string of hemp on the end part of the male thread. We give one turn clockwise, making sure that the hemp comes around and catches that end we are holding with our finger so that it don't move. And we can give a second turn to make sure it'll get well caught and it doesn't move. Then we keep on turning our hemp so it fills in every groove along the thread. Always, of course, clockwise, making sure the hemp falls into every little groove of the thread. What I call the will zone is the part of the thread that must be full of hemp when you finish. That is, not on top of the crests, but inside the roots and flanks. When we reach the end of the thread, then we turn back a bit, always clockwise, and we leave the other end of our hemp mixed in with the hemp that is round the middle part of our male thread. And with our finger we comb it in or push it in a bit so it gets level with all the rest of the hemp along the thread. Now it should be ready for us to screw on the female thread. It's a good idea to put our finger on the male thread while we are turning the female thread to help the hemp not getting out of place. As you can see, one has to use quite a bit of force because the female fitting is squashing and compressing the hemp to make sure there's a very good seal. Now we can keep on tightening as much as we want, but I believe that it's reasonable to leave one or two grooves outside in view. It has about 7 or 8 grooves, so 5 grooves inside the female thread is a good amount. Less than that would be a bit risky, I think. Then, if you want, you can cut off any excess of hemp that has been pushed out between the female and male threads. But if you do, cut it with a knife or scissors, but don't use hacksaw blade, because the teeth of the blade will catch on to the hemp and pull it, and we don't want to pull it out. Any excess of hemp that comes out the other side is a signal, shows us that we used quite enough hemp and it's being compressed and all the excess has been pushed out. If we hadn't used enough hemp, we wouldn't have this excess pushed out. In that case, it might be a good idea to do it all over again. Now I'm going to unscrew these fittings so you can see what it looks like, how it ended up inside the thread. One more turn, and let's get it out. Now, it doesn't look as pretty as PTFE tape or how it looked when we were wrapping it on. But the important thing is at the beginning of the thread, we have nice bits of compressed hemp. At the beginning there, that black part and that gray part, that is very compressed. And as I mentioned, this is like having custom-made gasket or packing. It's practically a hemp gasket. The part at the end of the thread is a bit too loose, but that doesn't matter. We have at least 2 or 3 grooves with hemp packing. Well, I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up, share it, leave your comments below if you want, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.